for participation tonight.
Will do. Thank you for joining us this evening for the February 2nd, 2021 Monte Sereno Council meeting. Before the meeting is called to order, I would like to point out a few house rules to assist council members, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. Council members, your microphone is live, so please keep your microphones on mute until you wish to speak. For tonight's meeting, we are using Zoom to host the City Council regular meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, raise hand and chat. Please use chat only to report technical issues such as being unable to hear a council member speaking. Please use raise hand to be recognized by the mayor and enable to speak to the council. To comment under oral communication or any agenda item, you're allowed 3 minutes to speak per agenda item. Emails limited to 350 words can also be submitted to the city clerk and it will be read into the record. This word limit is set to adhere to the typical 3-minute time allowance. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participants calling in from a telephone will only be able to listen and not provide comment or feedback. Lastly, because we are all not in the same room, all votes at this meeting will be taken by roll call.
Thank you. Calling to order the meeting of the Monte Sereno City Council for February 2nd, 2021. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mekachek,
Present.
Councilmember Turner, Councilmember Lawler,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi,
Present.
and Mayor Luthold.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Leonardis or Ms. Radcliffe, any changes to the orders of the day?
I do not have any.
None for me either.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving ahead, our first order of business is the presentation, recognition of the Santa Clara County 2020 Synopsis Championship Science Fair winners. Do we have someone here to speak on behalf of that science fair? If we do, please, if we haven't recognized you yet, please raise your hand and we will take care of getting you promoted to be a speaker. All right. Looks like we may need to pass on that. Ms. Radcliffe, do you have any information about our person or Mr. Leonardis?
I do not have information, but I will follow up shortly.
Okay, great. We'll come back to that. Let's go ahead then and move to the oral communications. Oral communications are the time for members of the public to speak on matters which are not on the agenda. So if something is on the agenda, this is not the time. It will come up in due course. If we have members of the public wishing to speak on general matters that are not on the agenda, please raise your hand now to be recognized. Seeing none, we will move to written communications. We have a hand raised by Ms. Shakar. Let's go ahead and see about recognizing Ms. Shakar to speak for 3 minutes.
Hello, Mayor. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate it. We residents of 18290 Davis Avenue request the below item related to the consent calendar for 18240 Davis Avenue meeting minutes to be pulled out from the consent calendar, as the decision and the motion by the mayor and the council members were made based on wrongful data, inadequate safety related analysis, and misinterpreted neglected municipal codes documented in the staff report as shared during the council meeting on January the 19th. The verdict of the variance to be granted for the 18240 Davis Avenue has huge impact on us and includes CEQA concerns. The proposed addition is going to affect the tree. Arborist evaluation of the tree is missing. This is the pine tree that I'm talking about that's on the southwest side of the property. This is a major tree holding the soil in the top of the hill. Any damage to this tree will have downward hill impact on us. The story poles are very, very close to the tree trunks. The orange wraps are not connected from the pole on the south side, to the story poles under the tree. These poles are not connected because there is no way those can be connected without cutting major branches of the tree or even cutting down the second tree next to the pine tree in the attached picture that I sent you all. If a wrap cannot be connected between the poles, a wall for sure cannot be constructed without cutting down the branches of the tree. Slope stability. State has additional setback requirements of steep slopes, and geotechnical report is required to substantiate the stability of the slope. These causes CEQA concerns. Example of the Highway 1 collapse is a very good example of what the impact would be if slopes and soil stabilities are undermined. It is a significant safety concerns for our family. Anything happens to the 18240 Dave's Avenue will just have a gravitational impact on us, with everything getting slammed onto our house and my kid's bedroom or onto the right side of the property, very close to the slopes. Variants need to have justification for special circumstances. All possible alternative options should be truly exhausted before giving special circumstances. Proposed site plan has a new garage being built on the north side of the property. If a garage can be built on the north side of the property, closer to the adobe home, so can a new bedroom can be built on that side. New bedrooms can be built in lieu of the new garage or on top of it with creative design to connect the adobe and the new bedrooms. Other non-adobe bedrooms can be built onto new bedrooms as well. Special circumstances are not proven without proper evidence, and hence variance cannot be proved. We kindly request the council member to remove the 18240 Days Avenue meeting minutes approval from the consent calendars today till all the open items are satisfactorily addressed as per the law, civil rights, and municipal codes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on matters not on the agenda, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we will move ahead. Ms. Shakara, I didn't see a note from you yet. Do we have anyone here on the science fair yet? Or sorry, not Ms. Shakara, Ms. Radcliffe. Do we have anyone on the science fair?
No.
Okay, all right. So moving to the consent calendar, do we have any members of the council wishing to pull any items from the consent calendar for further discussion, or do we have any small questions that to ask of staff that don't require pulling, but which council members wish to speak about? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Mayor Pro Tem Elahi. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Councilmember Mekachek,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi,
Yes.
Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
And the motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Moving ahead to item 7, new business. This is discussion and consideration on creating an ad hoc committee on the development of fence regulations. Do we have a staff report, Mr. Leonardis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As was discussed at a recent council meeting, council has requested formation of an ad hoc committee to best address changes to the fence ordinance. This agenda item certifies the creation of the fence ordinance ad hoc committee, naming council members Mekachek and Lawler as the chosen members. Staff is available for questions.
Do we have any council member questions regarding this matter? Seeing none, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on the issue of the adoption of the ad hoc committee for the fence height? Seeing none, do we have any further council discussion regarding this matter? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adopt the ad hoc committee resolution and to appoint Councilmember Mekachek and Councilmember Lawler to the ad hoc committee?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Yep. And we have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Councilmember Mekachek,
Aye.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi,
Yes.
and Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
And the motion passes 5-0.
Okay, moving on to item number 8, discussion and direction regarding the council action on regional housing numbers, RENA allocation, and also regarding SB 9 and SB 10. This is a discussion only matter at this point. I see that we have received some public comment, which has been posted to the agenda for written comments. And do we have a staff report by Mr. Leonardis before we move to, I believe Ms. Turner is going to present on this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. California legislators are considering 2 bills this legislative session regarding housing and zoning. Those bills are SB 9 and SB 10. In addition, there is additional correspondence from ABAG regarding RENA attached to our item this evening. Councilmember Turner is a member of the Housing Legislation Ad Hoc Committee. In conjunction with staff, Ms. Turner has prepared a presentation for council. After the presentation, council can direct staff to prepare responses, act joining other cities in a joint response, or employ what we refer to as strategic patience, which means wait and see what happens next and determine a future action and something we can act on later. I would also like to mention we received several written communications, as the mayor mentioned, on this item, which supported the RENA letter drafted by the mayor and sent to ABAG several weeks ago. And there is also a letter from ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments. And we are available for questions at this point in time, or we can move right into the presentation by Ms. Turner.
All right, let's move into that presentation, and then we will have questions. After that, we'll open to public comment. If there are members of the public wishing to speak, you can go ahead at any time and raise your hand, and we'll be able to shepherd you into proper order for discussion as we go forward. So, Ms. Turner.
Yes, thank you so much, council members and staff. I think Ms. Radcliffe will put up my presentation on the screen here so we can go through it. What I'd like to do is to present to you Monte Sereno's allocation numbers, which were given to us January 21st, and there are 2 pending bills that our city manager Leonardis talked about. And I also want to talk about the impact to the city. I have a call to action slide or 2 slides actually, where we could come to an agreement as a council so we can minimize the impact of our RENA numbers and these bills that will come our way. Let me try this. I will stop at the end of each slide to take questions from the council. I also want to say that I have worked closely with our city attorney, Rudin, and city manager Leonardis to ensure as best as we can the accuracy and the validity of the information that I'm about to present here. I also want to say that since I created the slides, I have been to a few meetings, a 6-hour meeting with the League of Cities, and also with Mr. Senator Scott Wiener himself. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So with that, Ms. Radcliffe, can we go to slide 2? Okay, so what you're seeing here is Monte Sereno's allocation for the year 2023 to 2031. As you can see, our numbers for equity adjustment has also gone up. The problem that many cities are having today is that HCD has inadvertently doubled the regional housing needs assessment for all of California. This has been reported by the Embarcadero Institute that the calculation that they have come up with is incorrect. The incorrect vacancy rate, for example, if you look at the slides, and double counting as seen in SB 828 has caused the Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, to exaggerate the units 900,000 for Southern California, the Bay Area, and Sacramento. Freddie Mac also calculates this number to be in excess of 820,000. So it doesn't take in the problem with the slides is that it doesn't take into account the impact of COVID-19. Senator Wiener at the meeting Sunday said he doesn't see any impact that COVID has had on our cities. So having said that, if you look at this, the state of California has 441,176 units that we have to build. Santa Clara County is 129,927 units. Monte Sereno has 192, and they have increased our equity adjustment. And that means that we have to build homes not in the moderate income level, but in the very low and the low income level. And this is designed not only to bring equity to the city, but also to bring down the cost of homes in the future. So that is the direction that the state is going. So Ms. Radcliffe, can we get to the third slide, please? So like I said, I attended the meeting for ABAG January 21st. And if you look at this list here, we have a list of several cities. This is not an inclusive list. Monte Sereno is in there. We should have gotten the letter stating that they received their letter, but they're not changing our numbers. In that meeting, the executive board voted 28 to take these numbers, 1 opposed and 3 abstained. So these are the numbers that we have for now. Okay. So the problem with this is that this is a one-size-fits-all approach. The numbers that we're getting does not take into account the differences between cities, between jurisdictions. It also removes local accountability in favor of developers, knocking down neighborhoods to build housing complexes next to single-family homes. So you're going to see, like in my picture in these slides, you know, multifamily homes right next to single-family homes. This does not protect any gated communities at all, right? So the problem with this too is that it worsens the housing crisis because we are building market rate housing and not affordable housing, not low income housing. If you look at Monte Sereno's numbers for 2015, yes, we fulfilled our numbers, but we did not fulfill our numbers in the very low and the low income. And many of the cities in California have said the same thing. They have fulfilled their numbers in the market rate, but not in the low income category. The other problem with this is it does not address infrastructure. They expect cities to come up and build the roads, the sewer. We have to look at the impact to climate change and the pollution, the removal of trees, because that will cause pollution. It also doesn't recognize the fact that companies, high-tech companies like Facebook and Amazon have asked their employees to work from home. And so this has impact to the economy. It doesn't address many of the residents moving out of California because of COVID-19. The last problem I want to talk about here is the lack of funding. The state is not going to give the cities funding for government housing projects. That is what low income is about. The lack of funding for low income housing from the state for cities like housing projects, government housing, education for all these incoming students are not going to be addressed. So at the meeting, the ABAG staff basically analyzed the situation. They said that Silicon Valley is job rich, and the jurisdictions within Silicon Valley are, quote, job rich. And that doesn't mean that the job is in the city. The jobs are close to the city. And they believe that we will see continued growth rate with jobs. Also, they said that 49 jurisdictions exhibit average racial and economic exclusion, and Monte Sereno is one of them.
Above average.
Therefore, there will be increases in lower income units proportional to its total household income in 2020. So at the meeting, there was a meeting January 14th. The Regional Planning Committee of ABAG suggested that their intent was to minimize the impact of the concentration of different income categories. Hence, Monte Sereno is one of those cities. Okay, so are there any questions about this? Yes, Mayor. Sorry, Council Member Lawler.
Couple of questions. First, I wanted to clarify a discrepancy. I think the 441,000 number is actually the amount of units Northern California is supposed to build. Is that correct? That the actual number for the state of California is well over 1 million.
Yes, yes. For all of California, it's actually 3.5 million.
Right. Okay. And then you mentioned the Freddie Mac report, and that was a report that used a different methodology to the old methodology, but it came up with very similar numbers, correct?
The Freddie Mac report said that the methodology miscalculated the number of homes by 820,000 units.
Okay, so it basically is supporting the Embarcadero report.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
pretty close.
Thank you.
Exactly. Okay, so any more questions?
I do have a question, Ms. Turner, or just an observation. Two things. One, I was reading in the Mercury News, I think it was in this morning's article, mentioned that different areas are on different housing cycles. So we're talking about numbers for our 2023 housing cycle. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and I think what I read was that Southern California, Los Angeles area is on an earlier cycle, either 2021 or in some 2020 or some sort of an earlier cycle. So they're actually going to have to deal with addressing the issues of the allocations to them before us. Is that true, or is that not true, or do you know?
That's an excellent observation, just like your letter, by the way.
Thank you. So that's good in the sense that we may be able to segue off of the Southern California work. They may be half a step or a couple of steps ahead of us. One other observation that I had just playing with the math, it looked like comparing the overall Santa Clara allocation of 199,000, almost 200,000 units, simply looking at Santa Clara's population versus Monte Sereno's population. And I did a back of the napkin calculation. It looks like we're actually allocated a little less than per capita. I think I had some number like in the 260s if we were allocated per capita. So it looks like we've actually come out a little better than the county overall. Did you take a look at that or have thoughts on that?
Yes, I did take a look at that. And one of the things we could do is discuss that, at the end of the presentation here as to what we want to do about our numbers.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Yes, please.
Very quickly, I understand, and you can clarify this for me, that the original intent of these of RENA and HCD was we were supposed to build one affordable unit for every market rate unit. So it was supposed to be a 1-to-1 ratio, correct? And that now it actually isn't that. It never has been. In fact, we're building 7 market rate units to 1 affordable unit, which is hurting the affordable housing market and making it far more expensive to even build those. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so let me give you some of the cities that were in this equity adjustment. It's Millbrae, Atherton, Portola Valley, Hillsborough, and of course, Monte Sereno. And there are like 49 of us. So Ms. Radcliffe, can we go to slide 4, please? Okay, so this is where we're at today. The ABAG Executive Board voted January 21st to finalize our methodology and our draft allocation. Okay, ABAG will now submit the methodology to HCD and then use the state's feedback to develop the final methodology and the draft RENA allocation in spring of 2021. So we have some breathing room here between now and spring of 2021. So since ABAG and HCD are now reviewing our numbers, the next few weeks would be ideal for cities to work with HCD to get our allocations changed. How much they will listen, it's hard to tell. All right. Now, release of the draft allocation will be followed by an appeals period, as you can see in the slides here, in the summer of 2021, with the final RENA allocation numbers assigned to each Bay Area local government in the late 2021. All right. So having said that, what I want to do is to concentrate on what we're going to do between February and spring. Are there any questions about this schedule? No. Okay, Ms. Radcliffe, can we go to slide 5? Okay, so having said that, let me move to some bills that we have today that we have to be dealing with. The first one used to be SB 1120. And this was introduced in the year 2020 and was not approved the last minute. So it is now called SB 9. SB 9 has 2 scenarios. Okay, SB 9 is ministerial, and also it does not need a CEQA review. So let me go through the first scenario. The first scenario says that we have 2 residential units within a single family residential zone. This is a provision that a developer can invoke. So now I have one parcel having 2 housing units. An ADU and a JADU are allowed by right on the parcel. So now I have a total of 4 units, 2 residential units, an ADU and a JADU without splitting the parcel. Questions? That's my teacher coming up.
So must they be owned by the same person, or can you sell an ADU in a junior ADU, and can you sell the other house?
Okay, good question. So scenario 1 says you cannot, this is not a split. So the answer is no. All right, so scenario 2, if you're gonna think about doing that, scenario 2 says that it's called an urban lot split provision. Here I have 2 residential units. I'm sorry, I have 1 parcel and it becomes 2 lots. So 2 split lots. Each lot can have a residential unit plus an ADU on one side. And then I have another parcel with a ADU and a JADU. And they have to be of equal size. If you're going to split it, it has to be of equal size. Okay. And now you're going to have 6 housing units. 3 on one and 3 on the other. And they can be sold separately. questions about that?
Yeah, question.
Yes,
So,
Mayor Pro Tem Elahish.
thank you, Councilmember Turner. Excellent presentation so far. Is the city have any control as to whether a lot, if a developer wants the lot split, that you have to allow the split?
If SB 9 passes, no. All right, it's going to be ministerial, and you don't need secret review. Okay, so we got those two. Let me make some statements now. The state has actually ordered more than 300 cities to build 3.5 million homes, right? 1.5 million homes have to be in the low and extremely low category. Now, they weren't strict about this in the RENA 2015, but in RENA 2023, they said they were going to impose this. One average ADU, for example, in order to build one, costs $500,000, right? So if I were going to build, 1.5 million homes, that's $759 billion. Okay, and that's a lot of money. And the cities are going to have to fund all of this. Okay, 90% of low-income households live today in market rate housing. So the cities at the meeting asked ABAG, well, how do we maintain the unique character of our city for single-family homes if we were gonna, have remedies for local investors? We're now going to see 12 to 20 units in the midst of single-family neighborhoods. We shouldn't be knocking down houses to build multi-unit buildings and destroy our neighborhoods. Sounds familiar? That's what we've been saying all along, right? Now, many of the cities are saying the same thing. Okay, so I just saw something that came up here in chat, and I didn't quite get it. So Miss Radcliffe, can we go to slide number 6? No. Slide number 7?
6, I think it is.
Okay.
No, 7 is.
Okay, so here we have the urban lot split provision, right? What we have here is we're subdividing an existing lot to have 2 residential units. Both newly created parcels are no smaller than 1,200 square feet. So that means that Monte Sereno, our smallest lot, is 8,000 square feet. So all our lots are going to be eligible. Now, here's the kicker. We cannot prohibit local setback requirements of more than 4 feet on either side of the 2 residential units for 2 residential units or for the lot split provisions. So from now on, the required setback is only 4 feet. Okay, the good thing is you can shake hands with your neighbors when you look out the window. Okay, so having said that, Ms. Radcliffe, can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, by the way, also, let me say this. There are no yards required. No garages will be required for both scenario 1 and 2. So guess what? We're going to have to be parking out in the streets. All right.
Question?
Yeah.
Councilmember Turner.
Yeah. Yes, who was it? I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi?
Yes.
Yeah.
So under this lot split provision, Monte Sereno average is about, or lowest is about 8,000. We could end up having like let's say it was 8,200 just to make it, or 8,400. Divide that by 1,200. You could technically have seven lots out of an 8,000 lot Well, you split it once and then you split it again and then you split it
No,
again.
no. Okay, so that's one of the things that you cannot do. Once you split a lot, you can't split it again.
Okay.
All right. So here's one scenario, and I'm going to put this in here because I don't want our city staff or council members to say all ADUs are ministerial, because that's not true. All right. There's one scenario here. It's scenario number 3, where the developer comes in City Hall and says, I want to invoke both the lot split, right? How many units do we get for the lot split? That's my question to you, council members. 6, very good. That was Council Member Lawler. She can count. And then you have 2 residential units are invoked, right? So with that, each parcel can have 2 houses, plus each parcel can have an ADU and a JADU. Therefore, you have 8 units. All right. The good thing about this, and I got to thank Senator Wiener, I guess, is that you don't have, you have to have council approval for 8 units. So City Manager Leonardis, you got to make sure that when somebody comes in here and says, we want to build 8 units, if SB 9 passes, you can say, you don't say, oh yeah, sure, ADUs are all ministerial. This is a situation where it's not ministerial. And what I want to do is put this into a resolution so we all remember that it's not ministerial for 8 units.
Councilmember Turner, I'm not sure about the calculation. If you split a lot, you still have just 1 unit on that lot, 1 residential unit, 1 ADU and 1 JDU. That's just 3. And on the second unit lot also you have 3, so a total of 6. Where does the number 8 come in?
Well, the second lot, the 2 okay, so I can have 2 residential units, and that I get 2 lots. I get 2 lots out of the lot split.
Two lots,
right?
No, there's just 1 lot. You split it into 2. Each lot has 1 residential unit, 1 ADU, and 1 JDU.
Each half can get 2 residential units.
Each half can get 2 residential units.
Oh, so after you split it on each lot, you can still put 2 units on it?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think that's if they invoke both of those provisions, right? It would be a
Yes.
situation where they invoke both those provisions.
Yes.
Got it.
And in this case, it's not ministerial. Council has to approve this,
Has to approve the ADUs.
the ADUs and the JADUs.
Thank you for clarifying.
So
Okay, so
if SB 9 were to pass, it would be my recommendation that we would bring an ordinance to council actually indicating that, if council wanted to make sure that this scenario didn't occur, we would need to modify our ADU ordinance. And so staff will need to stay abreast of SB 9 and its passage in order to be able to bring an emergency ordinance to council as soon as that, if that scenario occurs.
and we would also need to have an online system that can keep track of these things, right? Okay, so if we can have the next slide, please. Hey, you guys are doing really well. I thought we would get stuck in a slide. Okay, so the next one is SB 10. SB 10 used to be 902. Again, this was also defeated in 2020. And here you also don't need a CEQA review. Okay, this bill can build up to 10 units of market rate apartments, right? Here you only need the approval of city council, regardless of the zoning or the city's general plan. It also allows the city to override voter approved initiatives. So some have even questioned the constitutionality of this. Okay, so let me, if there are no, are there questions for this one?
Explain on SB 10, apartment houses, condo complexes.
Now, you can have, by the way, condo complexes, right? With SB 10, apartments, what else?
Arbitrary height.
Arbitrary heights, there are no height requirements. So you can have a 10-unit apartment that goes all the way up. One apartment each floor, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's what SB 10 is about. Let me go to the next slide. Now, here is where it may benefit Monte Sereno. And SB 10 only includes one exception, and that is the city council cannot rezone property if it's in a very high fire severity zone. All right. Now, I'm not really sure, and this is where City Manager Leonardis will need to come in, is Monte Sereno in a very high fire severity zone or just high fire severity zone? And I don't know if you have any comments about that, City Manager Leonardis.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Turner. About 30 plus percent of the city is located next to a wildfire urban interface zone. So although we are not in the zone, the city is not in the zone, we are located about 30 plus percent, it's between 30 and 40% is located in close proximity to a wildfire urban interface zone.
Okay, so these are some of the things that we're going to have to investigate, right, in the next 2 months until we get our final RENA numbers. You know, where is Monte Sereno? What do we really look like? How do we fight SB 9 and SB 10? Also, here's one extra thing here. It says it may override local land use protections for shorelines, urban boundaries, and open space. Ms. Radcliffe, can we go to the next slide, please?
Just a comment here. The fire zone, wildfire zone, I guess you can't really tell whether you're in a very high fire zone or not until you really have a fire, I suppose. But in the meantime, maybe we can do a percentage opt-out. So if you can convince somebody that we're in a 30% or 40% high fire zone, reduce arena numbers by the 30 or 40%.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll talk about that in the slide, in a couple of slides down. I want to get into more of SB 10.
Just for the council's benefit, there is actually a state law process by which the State Department of Forestry determines what areas on state lands are considered very high fire severity zones, and also on locally controlled lands. Now, the council can, by ordinance, extend that designation of very high fire severity zone. The issue with that is that comes along with a number of state law mandated vegetation management requirements that are very aggressive, including clearing, a certain space from any habitable structures. It also increases, building standards that apply. You need to be constructing everything in that zone to withstand, certain amounts of wildfires. So making that decision is, something that, should come with, some investigation and consideration, but it is something that the city does exercise some control over.
Yeah, so those are the things that we have to study, and many of the jurisdictions have complained that they've called CAL FIRE and CAL FIRE doesn't call them back. So they're not able to get, any map. So, but we'll talk about that at the end, what we can do. Okay, so let me, if I may, talk about this slide. This bill, right, you can pass and authorize a local government to pass an ordinance to zone any parcel for up to 10 units. And the height is specified in the ordinance. So
It's arbitrary.
It's arbitrary, basically. Now, this applies to transit-rich area And the definition of transit-rich area is a half-mile radius of major transit stop or on a major bus corridor. Okay. And for us, that would be Winchester, and there's one on Quito by the school, the West Valley College. All right, so those are the two areas that will possibly make us transit rich. Now, the next category here is job rich. And you don't have to have a job. You don't have to have jobs in Monte Sereno. Proximity to jobs, right? Which is close to us. You step, you know, a few miles, half a mile away from Monte Sereno, 1.5 miles, you're in a job rich area. High median income, yes. High quality public schools. And that is where we qualify in transit rich and job rich. Now, the next one is urban infill site. And here, City Attorney Rudin, I think here we're considered suburban. Is that right?
So urban infill site is mushily defined in the statute. The actual language in the statute is a site that is a legal parcel located in a city where the city is in an urbanized area or urban cluster as designated by the Census Bureau. I believe the city is actually within the San Jose urbanized area or urban cluster. I think I defer to Jeannie on that exact issue, but I recall asking her that question. And then additionally, in order to qualify as an urban infill site, at least 75% of the perimeter has to join parcels that are already developed with urban uses. This is where the statute's a little mushy because the word urban uses are not defined at all. But presumably residential uses are likely to be urban uses. So if there are houses on, 3 out of 4 sites, potentially it could qualify as an urban infill site.
So we have some investigative work to do here. This may apply to all of Monte Sereno, in fact. So here's another one that I want to talk about. This one says job rich hasn't been defined, and I'm not really sure what the answer is, because when I look at the bill, I see the definition of job rich, but then in other documents with other bills, it says we haven't defined job rich, and we will begin defining job rich January 2022. So this is like we're hitting a moving target because it hasn't been defined, or maybe it's been defined. Who knows?
So
okay.
With respect to that, job rich area means an area identified by HCD in consultation with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research that is high opportunity and is jobs rich or would enable shorter commute distances based on a regional analysis. And apparently, if this bill passes, HCD is supposed to prepare maps, which will publish an update starting January 1st, 2022. So basically, there's a lot of discretion for HCD to determine exactly what qualifies as job rich area.
Okay. So that's what I have for SB 10, basically job rich, 4-foot setbacks, right? Also, maybe we can look at, is Monte Sereno in a high fire danger area, very high fire? So we'll go through each amendment that we can make, maybe, or each point that we can make if you guys decide we want to write our letter to HCD. Yes, Councilmember Lawler. Keep saying Mayor Lawler.
That's all right. Okay, so my understanding when reading into the text of Senate Bill 10, they define the bus routes as having to be less than the bus regularity having to be no less than or no more than 20 minutes in frequency or 15 minutes in frequency. So there's language in there. And when I went and looked up the bus schedules for Winchester, those buses are in excess of 26 minutes. So this may be another angle. I don't know if that's enough, but it's certainly something to look at.
Yep, I agree. Okay, anything else? Let's move then to the next slide, Ms. Radcliffe, please. Okay, so here's my call to action. Oh, let me say this. In the past, and this was before January 29, the League of Cities with SB 1120 actually voted for SB 1120 and supported it. So many of the cities, Palo Alto, Cupertino, Saratoga, have written letters to the league essentially saying, we do not want you to support SB 9 and SB 10 for that matter. So last January 29th, I can't even remember what day it is anymore, the League of Cities voted to oppose SB 9 unless amended. And we can latch on to that. And the way we latch on to it is I've made a list here, and we can, I invite all of you to add to the list, and then City Manager Leonardis can actually take a look at that and investigate where we're strong at, where we're weak at. Okay, so the first one is, we talked about, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi talked about high fire danger area. And here is where we need a map. We can't just go to them and say, oh, we believe we're in a high fire danger. We need to get a map from the Director of Forestry and Fire Protection, not CAL FIRE. All right. And then we have to look at, is Monte Sereno in a high fire danger or very high fire danger? The other one is Monte Sereno in an earthquake area? Can we prove that? And then another thing that I have here is the dam risk area. And I was thinking the Lexington and Stevens Creek Reservoir.
Also this summer.
Right? And then the other thing we could say is, hey, we cannot start building until we have the infrastructure and the funding before we actually start building, because we can't have our ADUs use the roads to park their cars. If they do that, then we don't have access for police and fire department. Right? And the other infrastructure that we really need with post-COVID is broadband technology. We will need to support many of the high-tech workers that live in Monte Sereno to support them to work at home. That's going to be a new thing. The other one also is auto emissions, like pollution. We're going to have to look into that. How is that going to impact Monte Sereno? So these are the things that we can write on our resolutions, S with an S, SB 9 and SB 10. Okay, so are there questions about this, please? Okay, so let me go to the next page, which is the League of Cities. The League of Cities, like I said to you, voted for SB 1120. Cupertino, and you will see some letters that I've attached. Cupertino, Palo Alto have said that they are opposing the League of Cities position on 1120. The League voted to oppose unless amended. And Cupertino, Campbell, Saratoga officially opposed SB 1120 in 2020. The city of Cupertino has written a letter that I've attached to these slides here, and I think it's an excellent letter that we should look at. And then we're going to have the mayor write another one of his letters, or to the league stating that Monte Sereno opposes SB 9 and SB 10, if that's what you guys agree to. And then here's one thing that we could look at. We have to, if you guys agree that a lot split can only happen once. So we have to enforce that if that's what you want. The other one is construction of split of a lot has to occur within 1 year, because because it's going to be difficult for us if we don't have the online system to be able to track. They could sell it 5 years down the road and split something that has already been split to split it again. Okay, let me talk about SB 55. SB 55 is a bill that was written by two City of Los Angeles senators, Stern and Allen. And these were wildfire mitigation goals. They were opposing, and they were saying, hey, if we're in a wildfire area, then we should not be subject to SB 9 and SB 10. The League of Cities, the Housing Policy Committee, rejected this January 29. And the reason they rejected this was because 2/3 of the jurisdiction fall in the high fire area. That's why we really need to look at the very high fire area as well. So questions about this? Yes, Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you. I really like both of those letters, the one written by City of Cupertino, as well as the one written by California Alliance of Local Electeds. I just wanted to comment on that. I think they're both great. Thank you.
So we can either do a very detailed letter, right? Or we can make it very general like they have, but that's something we need to be able to discuss tonight. So let me, with that, let me open it up. Mayor Luthold, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and open this for public comment. And if there are members of the public wishing to speak on this subject, please raise your hand. We'll recognize members of the public. Then we'll come back to council member discussion about this after we hold the public portion of the hearing on this. So any public comment at this time? Looks like we have one hand up, Philip Weissman. If we can queue you up and call on you. If anyone else wishes to be called on, please go ahead and raise your hands. We'll get you in order. Gordon Anderson will be next. Mr. Weissman, at your convenience.
Good evening, everybody. This is Jenny and Phil Wiseman.
Hi, guys.
We just simply are on because we're trying to understand and pay attention to everything going on. And we're in the R18 zone. So there's not very many of us in the city of Monte Sereno. Most of you guys are all in the R144 and we're in the R18. So we already have some higher density zoning. And we're watching what's happening with our neighbors with lots being subdivided and multiple houses being put on these in our neighborhood. And we are feeling very, very concerned. If SB 9 or SB 10 pass, literally our neighbors could sell and they could subdivide their lot and we could have multi-unit housing right next door to us, right behind us. And that's not why we're here. And we feel really concerned. And Rowena, thank you. What a great presentation. Appreciate the homework that all of you are doing. And we're simply here to encourage you and pretty much implore you to please fight SB 9 and SB 10 as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's go ahead and recognize Gordon Anderson. We will follow Gordon Anderson with Brian Walsh.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So firstly, excellent presentation and thank you very much to the whole council for taking this discussion so seriously. It's super important for all of us, so I really appreciate the work that has been done and obviously the amount of work that's going to still need to be done. The question I've got is, I know it's very early days, but has the city even looked at any potential areas within our city boundaries where we may be able to put additional housing if we had to? I mean, it's likely, I guess, that there will be some additional required. Has the city looked at any potential sites and prioritized those? And again, I recognize it's early days, and obviously we want to be fighting this as much as possible, but as a backup, have we started looking at that? That's my question. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And we will be discussing that. The RENA numbers that are being assigned to the city, we're really looking at 2023 and beyond. And as we figure out what the numbers are, that will be the time that we start looking at what's coming along down the pike. Meanwhile, we've got the discombobulation of SB 9 and SB 10 on the horizon. So those are things that we will be watching closely. Let's go ahead and recognize Brian Walsh.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation, Rowena. That was great. And a couple things that we'd like to talk about is, to this point, I am just saying it's my experience that the city has had a tough time managing or showing its ability to manage this to date. If these two things pass, I'm very concerned on how we're going to manage it, and we need to have a plan for how we're going to manage that and comply in it in the future, because we've already shown, and we've brought this to the city's attention, that certain things, whether we're approved or not approved, and the developers are just building whatever they want anyway. And we have examples of that, and we've shown you guys that. And then another point that I'd like to say is the whole premise behind this is that we're supposed to build low-income housing. I think we're all fooling ourselves. The developer's going to maximize their profits on this, and these are going to be higher units, higher priced units than you're going to get in most areas in San Jose. So if we are actually going down that path and telling ourselves that we need to do this in order to provide some benefit, I think we're just fooling ourselves. And so if the city is willing to step up and manage that, then that's a different story. And I guess the last point that I would have, my wife may call back in, is that I'd also like to hear from the council members. I'm assuming that we're going to get this before the meeting's over, to see kind of where their heads are at. There wasn't a whole lot of talking, and I didn't really glean on where you guys are thinking, because we almost have to start at some point on where we, what our thoughts are before we start going down these different paths that Rowena is talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Yeah, we will be moving next to council member discussion on these issues. I think our city attorney can speak up about this. Obviously, what we're talking about today is whether the city is going to have a specific response, drafting some letters of opposition, following up on these issues, the RENA numbers, SB 9, SB 10, to have some coordinated response. It really is probably premature to be looking at what we are going to be doing should these pass. Should these bills pass in their current form, then each and every city is going to have to address the issues, and it would be premature for council members to weigh in on opinions about something that would become a specific matter before us in the future. We can't prejudge those things. If the city attorney has any further comments on that and wants to clarify, let's go ahead and hear from the city attorney, and then we'll turn to council discussion. Mr. Ridden, do you have any comment?
I don't have many comments. I think you're right in terms of the council can't really prejudge potential projects that would come before the council. But in terms of taking a position on state legislation, I think you folks are free to, follow your hearts and follow your community. You're also free, of course, to take whatever position you'd like on behalf of the city, lobby elected officials, pass resolutions that we can transmit, or, the city staff can transmit on your behalf, to the league or to the legislature or to the governor. Those are all, things city councils regularly do when it comes to these policy questions. Now, that being said, if these bills pass, particularly with SB 9, if the bills pass, they become state law, absent challenging them in litigation, which, we can discuss at some other point. Basically the city, similar to ADU statutes, the city would be forced to comply with it. My other observation with SB 10 is that SB 10 provides the city council with authority to pass, zoning ordinances that would increase housing density, but it doesn't require that the city do so. So in that respect, I think, SB 9 is a lot more likely to have impacts on the city than SB 10. But, certainly the council's free to take position on both bills.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Turner.
Yes, may I give you my input? Be the first to do that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and give you the lead on that. Go ahead.
And then you can throw darts at me after this. Okay, so here's what I think we should do. I think every city should, quote, fight the RENA methodology, whatever the fight means, right? And I think the HCD numbers, based on the Embarcadero Institute and Freddie Mac and the SCAG region, have said that they're incorrect. So I think we should be pushing back on HCD and ABAG.
So that's our first priority, is dealing with current RENA numbers, HCD and ABAG.
Yes.
And meanwhile, you want us to look at SB 9 and 10, express more of the legislative matter response there.
Yes. We
All
have
right.
to make a decision tonight, though, to do this, because we don't have time.
Right. Other council members, discussion on this? Ms. Lawler.
Well, I would have to say I completely agree and back up Councilmember Turner's report and instructions. I think that we do need to fight back. And in fact, if you haven't read the Embarcadero report, I highly recommend it, because it certainly explains how the counting was actually doubled, and they used the improper vacancy rates, as well as they overcounted for overcrowding and cost burdening. And it's quite fascinating. And the HCD is really not paying attention. So I support Councilmember Turner's suggestion, and I do have a video link to that Embarcadero report if anybody would like, any council members would like that. It's certainly helpful. And I also suggested that our city attorney subscribe to a informational email group that was put together by the City of Mission Viejo's city attorney, William Curley. He created a consortium of California cities, informational only, but it keeps us all in tabs, in contact with all the other cities and what they're doing regarding this. And so I don't know if Mr. Rudin has anything else to say about it, but it's something that's more information is always good, and it keeps us in the loop with what everyone else is doing. And that's my sense.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Elahi, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is just a critical issue. I think it's been discussed over the last 10 years. And at the outset, I guess we have some RENA numbers from our previous allocation, and I would like some details on where we are, whether we even fulfilled those yet or not, or we're behind on some of those old RENA numbers. These new RENA numbers effective 2023, the Embarcadero report and the other reports, I don't know if they check the availability all the way through 2031, or are they doing the counting as of now? So maybe you can shed some lights on that. But the critical thing is, yeah, we definitely need to oppose it. I mean, my viewpoint, one of the strengths of this country is that individual citizens who reside in a city are able to manage how their city is developed, and they can talk to the city council, and the city council reflects what they want. Once it gets to the state and to the Congress, I mean, the Congress especially, every 2 years, all they need is they just want to raise money for their next election. So taking that away from the city is, I think it impacts our democracy. It really is a very critical issue. We should be able to decide right here as to what kind of city we want to live in. And the second thing is, I mean, this is just, to put it mildly, it's just hogwash. I mean, you're really not building low-income housing when you force somebody to live in Monte Sereno and pay $500,000 or more for a shanty unit. So, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And there's no leverage in being able to negotiate with other adjacent communities which need the housing. I mean, they may want to develop it so that Monte Sereno can work out something with them, and that's also missing. I think that should probably be something that we add on to our request or demand that cities like Monte Sereno should be able to talk to neighbors who want to be able to build houses, and if we can advance them some funds to do it, that would be better allocation of the money. The other piece of this puzzle really is not, it's just not really the city council is not really in a position by itself. I mean, the strength is going to be in numbers. So I think whatever we do, we should encourage everybody, all the Monte Sereno city residents and everybody who's concerned about this, to write letters to our assembly person, because that's where it's going to be decided, to our state senators, which is where it's going to be decided, and do a massive email onslaught of some sort to say, we want control. This is our city. We want to be able to run it the way we want it, and you guys need to back down and not come up with this pie in the sky dream that really is not going to affect anything for anybody else. So if that happens, then I think we'll have an impact. I mean, our city like us by itself, they're going to just put us on the side there. But if the Monte Sereno cities, and I really appreciate the people who are here today to listen to all this, if they can do a citizens movement and start sending out emails and or set up groups on Nextdoor or wherever, where we could start. And also, the fact that these bills didn't pass last time, we shouldn't assume that they didn't pass because there wasn't support. The only reason these bills didn't pass last time is because they ran out of time. The Senate had approved a version and the House had approved a version. They were supposed to meet together, have the two versions finalized, but they had to do it by that midnight and they just were 2 minutes late. So there is a lot of support in the Senate and the House to get these bills passed. So unless we do a massive campaign against opposing these things, it's going to be a very difficult one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Mekachek.
Yes, I think that what Monte Sereno needs to do is take kind of a substantive approach, not an emotional support approach to this. I think that we need to outline the issues that we face, and I think we have to say, here are the issues, the 10 reasons, what we would need to overcome. And I just picked the number 10, but we don't have infrastructure. And I think that was outlined in the presentation, that we don't have the infrastructure in the city of Monte Sereno to support higher density. In terms of fire, I believe that we're in extreme fire risk. That's south of Highway 9, but I would be careful about publicizing that too much, because I know that certain people have had their fire insurance rates raised or the whole offer of insurance taken away. So that we have to be careful with that. There are seismic issues in the city of Monte Sereno. We're only, I think, some 2 miles from the San Andreas fault line, which goes through Lexington Reservoir. I would like to get a copy of the link that Councilmember Lawler mentioned. If you could send that to me, that I would appreciate it. And I think it would be good for us to really know our ADU numbers and also what's happening with our population in terms of, how have we increased our housing stock and what's our best estimate of what our capacity is. Because if we've got more capacity that's not being utilized, then, do we want to build even more capacity, if you will? So, our demographics are aging, and they're on large lots, and you know there is capacity there at some point in time. I also think that there's going to be a lot of opposition to this from other jurisdictions, and to the extent that we can understand what jurisdictions similar to Monte Sereno are putting forth in opposition to this, we should join with them in making opposition to it. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to, Ms. Turner, did you have some response there?
Let me just
Yeah.
say quickly, when we're going to go out, right, to get citizens' input, we cannot use Nextdoor. We have to use a valid survey from a database from the city. So, Mr. Leonardis, this is something we're going to have to build, because the data that we're going to have to give HCD and ABAG have to be data that's valid, and it has to be, you know, significant. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so Mayor
Yeah.
Luthold, I just wanted to say, after this slide, I have examples of the letter to ABAG. I'm sorry, the letter to the league, letters to HCD, and also some links that you may want. The link that you will need for reference. So take a look at that as well.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think
Tonight.
Yeah, so I think we've heard some good specifics here with the input we've received. We should be, my view is we should be responding firmly and strongly on the RHNA numbers with specificity. I think we should follow up if we, I guess we're really just looking for nods from council, and I think we've basically got 5 nods from council. We want to go forward preparing a strong letter with specifics to respond to the ABAG RHNA numbers from those issues. We also want to continue to move ahead on again, specific responses on SB 9 and SB 10, preparing to respond regarding that legislation, and also to lobby for our citizens to get involved so that it's not just us as a city voice, which we can easily act on and be coordinated about, but making sure that our residents speak up. We have a lot of very well connected and concerned residents who can speak up on these issues. It's been my observation over the years that a lot of these bills fail and a lot of these bills get modified in major ways. But as other council members have pointed out, we can't rely on that this year. I think last year, part of them failing at the last minute was a very well organized trick to make a couple of these really awful bills fail at the last minute. But sure enough, here they are at the beginning of this year, coming back stronger than ever before. Previously, we had seen some of Senator Wiener's bills gutted by some of the other jurisdictions. Napa County came in at one point and carved out a bunch of exceptions. So I think we're going to have to watch who our friends are and make sure that we participate in creating carve-outs. But it's pretty scary to see that they're talking about transit-rich or jobs-rich or something to be determined here. They really are working very hard to take away single-family housing, to take away local control. So we need to stay on top of those things. It sounds like we've got direction on all of that. Ms. Turner.
Yes, one more thing. After you're done, Mayor Luthold, can we talk about the next steps? Because I have a next step for you guys, more work.
Okay, when you say after we're done talking right now, you want to come back to those next steps, or after we're done dealing with these, you want to keep this on calendar? After
you've gotten consensus from the group that we're going to do SB 9 and SB 10 resolution and write a letter to the league. And then
okay.
talk about the
All
numbers.
right, so I believe we have that consensus. Let's take this in the opposite direction. If anybody wishes to express non-consensus with this, please raise your hand and speak up now. Otherwise, we will go forward as a group in consensus. Seeing none, we have consensus. Okay, Ms. Turner, other action items related to this matter.
So here's what we're gonna do going forward, right? And Ms. Radcliffe, can you show my last slide, please? If not, that's okay, I can talk to it.
Give me one moment. It'll be right up.
Yeah, so what I want to do is schedule another meeting for the next council meeting, which is Mayor Leonardi's February 16th, right?
That's right.
Okay, so February 16, I want some time again to talk about what we have discovered. So Ms. Radcliffe, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so here's the next step. I want to work with our city attorney to investigate options. In order for us to go to HCD, we cannot do it alone. It's going to be way too expensive, and we don't have the mass of residents to go up with them. So one of the things that I'd like to do to investigate with our city attorney is to look at other jurisdictions, because SCAG has already been doing this for a year. We can take their best known methods. We can look at the ABAG COG, right? Palo Alto, Cupertino, Los Altos have been very aggressive. They're working with SCAG, and they're looking at pushing back with HCD. So we have options. We can say, yeah, we'll push back and we'll contribute to the pushing back, or we can say we're going to write an amicus brief. And these are the things that I'd like city attorney to investigate. I will give him the names of a lawyer that has been working with SCAG and with some of the ABAG jurisdictions that we could look at. And also there's an alliance of elected officials called CALI. And today there are 65 jurisdictions who have signed up, and they're all anonymous, right? And this is where we interviewed Scott Wiener. And what we want to do with Cali is to work with them to figure out how can we join, and the city, because Monte Sereno, we don't have a lot of money. What can we do to be able to make an impact and get our numbers down? And the attorney that I'll work with our city attorney and with city manager Leonardis on this one. And then I will present this to you February 16.
All right, great. And really that's what we've got you on the ad hoc committee for this legislation for. So yeah, also bring in your other committee member and take advantage of this. I know it's a lot of work and it's really appreciated. So, okay. Anything further? If not, let's move on to the next subject. And I would actually like to exercise my prerogative to advance item number 10 ahead of item number 9. If there is no objection to that, we've got several people here who want to speak on the issue of the San Jose water rates application. So unless there is objection from my fellow council member, I will go ahead and advance to item number 10. We'll come back to 9 afterwards. Seeing none, Mr. Leonardis, do you have some staff comments regarding item number 10, the San Jose Water request to increase water rates?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. San Jose Water Company has applied to the California Public Utilities Commission to increase customer water rates as per the letter attached in our agenda and distributed to San Jose Water Company customers and other agencies such as Monte Sereno. There is a public advocate process where the public can comment on the proposed rate increases. Staff is looking for direction to determine if Monte Sereno as an agency desires to comment on the increase formally through the public advocate process, join other agencies and comment as part of a larger process, or discuss other options. If Monte Sereno were to formally protest, staff recommends obtaining specific data regarding water rates and methodologies in comparison to other agencies across the San Francisco Bay Area before drafting a response. Ultimately, a judge will preside over a California Public Utilities Commission hearing, so data provided by any interested parties in support or opposition will have to be factual and reasonable. In other words, there is a burden of proof for interested parties to bear. This concludes my comments, and staff is available for questions.
Okay, probably will make sense to go ahead and move on to the public comment portion of this discussion. I know we have John Tang. Go ahead, Mr. Makachek.
Yes, City Manager Leonardis, what's the timing on this? Do you know when we have to make these decisions, whether we want to create our own opposition to it, or what's the timeline, please?
Thank you, Councilmember Makachek. Staff is looking for direction at the end of the discussion this evening if there is something the council wishes to put in writing and get that over to the California Public Utilities Commission. Obviously, that will take a little bit of time to do the research. So if staff gives us direction, or excuse me, the council gives staff direction this evening, staff could begin working on it. And when I'm speaking of staff, of course, I'll be relying on Mr. Rudin quite a bit, as well as other staff members besides myself. And we will put together some correspondence and bring it back to council for a second look. And then the process to object as part of the public advocacy meeting is, I believe that is in May. So we would have to get it back before then, of course, to get it submitted. The more time is better.
Yeah, and that's why we are moving on this early. We just received the notice, both as individuals and as a city, regarding the San Jose Water request. And now is the time that people are beginning to figure out what actions they wish to take regarding that request. So we do have some members of the public here to speak on this. We have John Tang available. He is the representative from San Jose Water. He's not going to be giving a presentation tonight, but he is, I believe, available to speak. We also have Rishi Kumar, who has his hand raised. But I'm going to go ahead and call on John Tang to speak first as the representative of San Jose Water so he can introduce this subject to us. Mr. Tang, you'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is John Tang. I'm Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for San Jose Water. With me tonight is Andy Gear, our President and Chief Operating Officer. We appreciate the opportunity to provide information about our filing. We recognize that there's never a good time for rate increase proposals. This is certainly true during this once in a generation pandemic. Our water system actually has continued to provide safe and reliable service through the pandemic. And we, along with the communities we serve, including Monte Sereno, have also weathered natural disasters such as wildfires and floods, as well as PSPS events and brownouts over the last few years. I'm proud to report that our water system performed exceptionally well, owing to the over $1 billion invested in the last 10 years to install new water mains, replace tanks and reservoirs, and retrofit our surface water treatment plant. These ratepayer-funded investments are critical to ensuring our ability to deliver on our public health protection mission. Similarly, the investments we have proposed in our general rate case application were carefully considered to allow us to continue to deliver on this mission. The challenges stemming from natural disasters and the pandemic will be with us for some time. Delaying these investments in our water system will not only lead to service degradation, but also inevitably result in higher costs and rate impacts in the future. As mentioned by the city manager, the CPUC and the Public Advocate's Office will thoroughly review our application over the next 11 months and ultimately set rates that are just and reasonable while also supporting a safe and reliable water system. Our proposed expenses and capital investments will be closely scrutinized to ensure they are necessary to deliver safe and reliable water service. Because of the timing of the required filings, the proposal does not consider the 2021 rate increase that became effective on January 1st. As such, final rates determined by the CPUC will be less than what was proposed. The water rates issue is one that is affecting the entire industry. I think if you do a quick Google search of water rates rising faster than inflation, you will find a bevy of quality sources that speak to this issue. This is not an issue that is unique to San Jose Water Company. Our municipal peers are also facing the same challenges, namely rising wholesale water costs, the need for capital investments, compliance with increasingly stringent water quality requirements, and certainly here in California, conservation. Our company, San Jose Water, has been a part of this community for over 154 years. We will absolutely continue to support our customers in the communities where we live, work, and serve. From low income to customer assistance to conservation programs, we will assist our customers and support our communities through this pandemic and beyond. We also remain committed to delivering on our public health mission by investing in our water system to deliver safe and reliable water service. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you are able to stick around, it's possible there may be some comments that are directed at you. If you need to leave and drop off, that's fine. Let's go ahead and call on Rishi Kumar next. And then after that, we have queued up Brian Walsh.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. So I do want to thank you all for inviting me, and thank you, Mayor Lutol and council members for putting this very important topic on the agenda. So we have quite a few challenges, unfortunately, with the pandemic. And then I was listening into the housing element challenge that is looming ahead. And Rowena, that was a very, very nice presentation. Thank you for leading charge. And yes, so I do believe that this is an opportunity for the cities to collaborate and work together. So let's talk a little bit about water. And many of you know that we have been pushing back with these water rate increases since 2016. And the story so far is that with the help of people and the protest emails to CPUC, we have so far rejected, reduced, or suspended 8 water rate increases. So it is very unfortunate that San Jose Water Company has chosen to submit a 21.47% GRC rate increase. And if you recall, 3 years ago, GRC A.17.04-001, that was approved at 8.3% instead of 10.8%. So the request was 10.8% and it was approved at 8.3%. And there were multiple hearings conducted. I was there at San Jose City Hall, and thank you, Mayor Sam Liccardo and council members for making that happen. And I do believe it should happen again this year, where a presiding judge and a commissioner would be at San Jose City Hall hearing, hopefully in the near future. So, but you know, when you look at the reason I mentioned 10.8% is because this is a huge jump from 10.8% that was requested 3 years ago to 21.47%. And we all know that in a pandemic, there are a huge amount of issues currently happening with paychecks and businesses not having a livelihood. And in fact, you know, I've posted a few messages I've received how people are extremely concerned because they're like, I don't know how I will pay the bill. And it's a pretty simple story that they are sending out that, look, this is too much. I can't pay my bill. I can't pay my rent. Now I have to pay this water bill too. So there is a lot of angst which is building up, right? So this money is going to be used for infrastructure improvement, water quality requirements, and cybersecurity and data privacy projects. So if you have all seen the notice that came to our homes, and these are the 3 topics that has been presented by San Jose Water Company. So my take is that we should analyze San Jose Water Company's financial books to understand what has been done for these 3 areas that they have mentioned, including.
So Mr. Kumar, I'm going to interrupt just in the interest of keeping time reasonable here and balanced. If you stick around, if you're able to, we may have some council member comments directed at you when this is done, but I'd like to go ahead and move through everyone for initial public comments first, and then we'll move to council member comments, and we might have some more to direct at you if you can stick around.
Absolutely. Yep, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Yep.
Okay, next we will recognize Brian Walsh for 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a couple questions on this thing. And by the way, thank you, Rishi. That was good. I look forward to hearing more from that. But, in the initial comments from the representative from SJWC, he talked about everything is being closely scrutinized. Can we talk, we're talking about how we're going to raise the costs for the water. And they have once again shown that they can't even manage their own projects. They are at least 2 to 3 years past on the project, the water treatment plant on Moore. They are $50 million over budget on the water treatment plant in Moore. And they are that inefficiency is just being passed along to the consumers. So you need to get your house in order first before you go ahead and do these type of things. So I am in support of fighting this one as well. Thank you. I will give my 1 minute and 50 seconds back to Rishi if you'd like.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Ed Turner, who will be followed by Blythe Block. Mr. Turner.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say that I'll give you the punchline in the beginning. I want you to do everything in your power to oppose these rates, okay? We've been here before. In the words of a great baseball coach, it's deja vu all over again. A couple of years ago, we had these meetings. We had one of them in the council chambers in Los Gatos, where there were probably 100 people attending. Mr. Tang was speaking along with somebody from Santa Clara Valley Water District. About 3/4 of the group got up and walked out in the middle of the presentation because they were so disgusted by what was being presented. And I see the same thing here. I don't buy the idea that this rate increase is needed for San Jose water infrastructure. Reese mentioned looking at their financials, and I agree. I think we ought to do that. I took just a very cursory look at the financials here. I expected to find a stodgy old utility company. I expected to find predictable earnings. I expected to find a relatively conservative PE. I expected to find high dividends. Well, I found just the opposite. What I found was a growth company. I found a PE higher than the S&P 500, higher than the S&P 500 for a utility. I found earnings compounding at over the last 5 years at about 15% a year. Okay, I found dividends compounding at 11% a year. I mean, not bad. That's really great for your shareholders. But my conclusion was that your rate increases are designed to pump up your financials and pump up your stock price and justify your executive salaries. The only thing I have seen that is increasing faster than my water bill is your executive salaries. And I think it's time we stand up and do something about this. I'm very upset about it. I would like, I'm sure that Monte Sereno has a contract with San Jose Water Company. And I'd like to look at that contract, and I'd like to investigate termination and renegotiation. I think as long, I don't believe that these people are serving the public interest. I think that as a monopoly, they have an obligation to keep rates reasonable for their subscribers. And I don't see that happening at all. So I'd like to hear more from Rishi on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. All right, next we will recognize Blythe Block. You may go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so the most egregious part of this rate raise is the proposal to increase the fixed proportion of the water bill as opposed to the part of the water bill that any customer could decrease by decreasing or conserving his water use. So what this is going to do ultimately is just going to be a further nail in the coffin for housing insecurity. Housing insecurity was bad before the pandemic, and now during the pandemic, it's even worse. And you know, the question for Mr. Tang is, how can you justify yet another fixed, irreducible cost to you know, citizens, which is eventually, you know, if you keep increasing your fixed costs, you're going to not be able to afford to stay in your home. And this is just a small step in that direction. So that's the worst part about it. I noticed that people have said that we have to have factual and reasonable kinds of presentations to the judge when we talk to the PUC, but I don't think we have. I think it's the facts speak for themselves as a legal term, in terms of the fact that we shouldn't do anything to further increase housing insecurity by increasing fixed costs. The fact of the matter is that in Monte Sereno, when you have elderly people, they don't have the capacity to increase their income to pay these fixed costs. So I'm going to end my comments at that point. So I'm opposed to the water increase.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Okay, any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing no hands up, let's go ahead and turn this over to council member comments. And since this is a discussion tonight, if anyone has specific comments that they want to direct to either Mr. Tang, Mr. Kumar, I would go ahead and allow those questions to be put out there and for them to respond to those questions. Councilmember Turner, you're on mute.
Sorry. I asked that this be put on the agenda. In 2017, the council at that time wrote a letter to CPUC, essentially complaining about the executive bonuses and the executive salaries that San Jose Water was making. For example, their executive bonus was $3 million. Today, if you look at their salaries, I don't think anybody there in terms of their executive is making less than $800,000 a year. And I don't know what their bonuses are because it's not online. So I think one of the things that they need to look at is, what about my stakeholders? Why can't I take care of them? I understand taking care of your employees, but not at the expense of your stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members, Councilmember Lawler.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Tang. First of all, I want to let you know that I appreciate the position you're in. It's not easy. We do live in a desert and water is expensive in California and it's a precious commodity. However, this increase is just too big of a pill to swallow. And I wanted to, two things. I wanted to know, is this $17 a month increase on top of the $4.50 a month projected increase for Valley Water, our wholesaler? That's question number one. And then question number two is front loading the increase necessary? Couldn't this be spread over several years? Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and gather these questions together. I assume Mr. Tang is taking some notes. Let's see if we have other council member questions so we can keep them grouped together. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, I mean, rate increases are never pleasant, but this is really a very high rate increases that you're seeking. And I understand you acquired the Connecticut, I think, water company or somebody, and that merger should have helped you reduce your costs. Normally, that's the purpose of mergers, but it sounds like you need additional funds to take care of whatever merger issues might have come up because of the cost of the merger. So I'm not sure if the funds are going to be used to enhance your water availability and rates and infrastructure, or if they're going to just be used to let you acquire maybe another third water company somewhere else. So it's very aggressive for you to come back just after you've had a merger and say, okay, I need another $20 raise. And I also appreciate the comment that you're asking for fixed costs to stay the same and providing very little opportunity for people to save money. So I'm not satisfied you need this much of a raise at this point in time. And also, I'm really curious to know what you're doing for lower income people as far as their cost of water. Is there some subsidies that you are doing? Because I know companies like Silicon Valley Clean Energy has provided subsidies for lower income homes with electricity bills. And are you doing some equity participation in that, or is the money all being used for dividends and other company buybacks? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Mekachuk.
Yes. When Mr. Tang sent an email to all the council members offering to speak, I contacted him and we spoke for 90 minutes last Friday. And one of the things that Mr. Tang advised me to do is take a look at their website and look at the rate case. So what I would like to do is ask him to direct everyone to where they can receive additional information. That's the detail that a lot of people are asking for. The other thing is that I asked Mr. Tang earlier today for the contact at the public advocate office in San Francisco, and I haven't received a response from him. I also am asking him a number of other questions that are in the rate case. And I'm not prepared to drill into that, but I think this is going to be quite a process to go through, and it's not ending tonight. This is just the beginning. So if he could answer those questions, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to add, obviously, my concern about this. I spoke about this last time it was before the council, and I think the comments that have been made are important. I appreciate Mr. Mekachuk wanting to dig deeper into this before really taking a position on it. It sounds like is what I'm hearing there. To really gather the information and make a decision that's not emotion based, although we obviously emotions run deep on this. So I'm going to come back to Mr. Tang to speak to this. My question is actually addressed to Mr. Kumar, and that is to come back on after Mr. Tang to address any additional issues in a manner that is as quick as possible, but most importantly, to give us also that contact information for where to go to get information from you in terms of the opposition that you have been performing in the past and will be obviously mounting in the future here. So if Mr. Tang can raise his hand to be recognized again, followed by Mr. Kumar. There we go.
Yes, can you hear me, Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead. And we don't need to run a timer, but we will be keeping track of time a little bit to try to keep things fair here.
Yes, thank you. I will try to go through here. I did write down the questions. Councilmember Lawler, the Valley water increase that you're talking about is, I think, anticipated for July 1st. This rate proposal does not include that. When Valley Water raises their rates on July 1st, if they raise their rates, we will then follow through with a pass-through for whatever incremental increase that is going to be. Regarding your second question, we replace infrastructure when we need to replace infrastructure, and it's supported by our asset management plan. We propose the infrastructure replacements to the Public Utilities Commission, and ultimately it would be up to them to decide whether our proposal is reasonable and well thought out. And so we will look forward to that feedback from them, as well as feedback from the community here. Mayor Pro Tem, your questions were related to the merger. The merger was actually completed at the parent level. SJW Group is our parent company. So water utilities are very, I guess, unique in the sense that, it's local. There's no real relationship in terms of water supply or anything else for that matter between San Jose Water and our sister companies in Connecticut and in other places. And that's the way the CPUC looks at them too, is it's a standalone utility. You figure out what your expenses are for this utility, you figure out what your capital budget needs are for this utility, and you set rates based on that. Your second question related to low-income customers, thank you for asking that question. We actually do have a low-income program. It's called our Water Rate Assistance Program, soon to be changed to our Customer Assistance Program at the request of the PUC. So it's just a name change. We provide a 15% discount to households that qualify for that. And the guidelines, I believe, are 200% of the federal poverty level. So we have information on our website. I'm glad to point you to that as well. Councilmember Mekchuk, thank you for your questions. I enjoyed the time that we spent together discussing this. I will send the council and the city manager the link that I sent you. I think that's what you were asking for, with instructions on how to get to that page that has our entire application, minus a couple of the items that I still owe you, but that is where it is on the CPUC website. I will also send the council members and Mayor Pro Tem the link to the information on our website as well. And so you will have that in two places. And I did get your emails, council member. I will respond to them, very shortly tomorrow. And I think that was all the questions that I wrote down.
All right. Well, we've got you as speaker. Any other council members want to follow up with Mr. Tang? Seeing none. Let's Councilmember Elahi.
Yeah, I thought there was some public comments also that needed to be addressed. Probably had to do with the fixed rate issue, and I forget what the other one was, but there's a couple of those comments. Could you address that? Did you write those down, Mr. Tang?
Yeah, I guess I would just clarify that. I think I heard that essentially that it's a regressive and unfair burden on people on fixed income and the poor to be increasing the costs that are not in people's control at all. So, Mr. Tang, your comments on that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I think this is where we're going to dive a little bit into rate making, and I don't want to, obviously this is not the time to do it. We can certainly dive in another time, but essentially the fixed cost issue is something that I think the Public Utilities Commission even recognizes in terms of having a safe and reliable water system. For many utilities, most utilities, I would say, certainly the investor-owned utilities, they are not recovering their fixed costs in the service charge, which is what we're talking about. Here. When you have weather variations, when you have consumption variations like we have, where there are calls for conservation and people are using less, and customers get mad when you ask them to conserve because there's a drought emergency and you don't recover your fixed costs and you have to go back and try to recover that. There's a lot of people who are upset about that. the Public Utilities Commission, as a result of this latest historic drought that lasted from 2014 through about 2017, they recognized that that was an issue for the utilities. They want rates to be reasonable. The fulcrum that they have is just and reasonable rates with safe and reliable water infrastructure. And the way to have safe and reliable water infrastructure is to have these water utilities make the investments and recover their fixed costs in the investments. And so in a policy decision back in 2018, the Public Utilities Commission recognized that there was room for utilities to collect more of their fixed costs, certainly not 100%, but more than what they were collecting before, to level the playing field a little bit, if you will, to ensure that they can collect more of their fixed costs. And so we are following that guidance that came from that decision. I understand that it's a big lift, certainly for fixed income people, certainly for low income people. And ultimately, the Public Utilities Commission will take all of this input, yours, other people who are weighing in on this very specific issue and saying that the service charge is going to be too high and we cannot afford that. And they will take all of that into consideration, as well as the need to have a safe and reliable water system into consideration when they actually set the rates for us later this year.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Mekachek, did you have a follow-up question for Mr. Tang?
When you drill into fixed rates versus variable rates and what Mr. Block said, there's a lot of uncertainty as to how rates should be constructed, but I believe strongly that there should be a huge incentive to conserve water. And I think that rates can be constructed such that they're revenue neutral, whether they're high fixed or high variable costs. But I'll leave that for when we've got more information, when San Jose Water provides me the specific information that I had been requesting. But this will continue.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to Mr. Kumar, if he's available to elevate and call upon to provide us some more information about his responses on this, and also how to get more information and follow-up contacts, both for council as well as for our citizens. So, Mr. Kumar.
Yes, okay. Thank you again. Thank you so much. I'll try to make this quick. I know you have been having a meeting, and thank you again, John, for answering all the questions in a concise, precise manner as always, and I really appreciate that. So, a couple quick ones, and I'll just sort of run through it if you don't mind. And the council members can reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to talk to each and every one of you, and lots of good friends on the council. Great to see all of you, and please do reach out. My phone number is on the City of Saratoga website, and you can call me anytime, and I'm happy to dig deeper. But let me run through this very quickly, just being cognizant of time. Firstly, on service charges, some public utility companies have zero service charge. I believe Palo Alto and Santa Clara, they have a public utility company and they have zero service charge. And unfortunately, the way it is situated, if we leave and we are gone for 6 months and we are gone on a vacation, we come back, we'll have a water bill from San Jose Water Company. And now, we talk about this GRC. It actually is, it is going to be the cost of service. And so this is going to be a dramatic increase on our water bill. And, so, when you look at a public utility company, obviously it's not for profit. And San Jose Water Company is a for-profit company, right? I get it. But in a drought of 2016, their profits went from $22 million to $52 million, $52 million in 2016. And that's what really shook me up. And I said, okay, we need to do something. And I think it's not right, that a profit has to go up in a drought based on surcharges, and the water bills were extremely high, right? So references to the financial statements of San Jose Water Company today, it's very relevant. They were factual, and I invite everybody to analyze it. Let's look at a total of $88 million increase in the cost of service. Then you look at a fixed cost, so that's a fixed cost. But you look at the recovery of 7 million and 11 million via customer surcharges that are going to start January 1st, 2022, if CPUC approves it. So, this is going a little haywire. By the way, with Valley Water, last year, they did not increase their water charges. And so San Jose Water Company did not increase their water rates as a result of that transfer of service charges or water rates from Valley Water. So that's a good thing. This year, I'm on the Valley Water Commission, and I actually made a request to the board because the commission is not a body that makes binding decisions. It's the Valley Water Board, and I'm not on the Valley Water Board. So I made a request of the board as a commissioner that, look, let's not increase the charges. And they call it groundwater production charges. And that was my request that I made at the last meeting. In fact, it was last week. So let's talk a little bit about water rates. So water rates are higher. Our water rates are higher than Las Vegas, which is in the middle of a desert. And when you look at San Jose Water Company, we have some data on that, and I'll tell you where to find that. 350% increase since 2010. Now, San Jose Water is 2 times the rate compared to Great Oaks, and San Jose Water Company is 5.5 times compared to Coachella Valley Water District. And we have lots of use cases that you can find at rishikumar.com/water. And that's rishikumar.com/water. And if you go through option B, which has a very detailed letter, if you go to the appendix of that letter, you will find many of these case studies. So, essentially we should, my ask of the CPUC is that we have to analyze San Jose Water's financial books. Like I said earlier in my first segment, was we have to analyze, how much they have spent based on the profit they have achieved in the last 10 years, which is $342 million. How much of that was spent towards infrastructure improvement, water quality improvement, and cyber security and data privacy projects, right? So I'm very curious on that. And then we should also try to understand, how in the last 10 years, they have spent this money towards improvements like water main and well replacements, all that kind of stuff, So here's my take. There are a couple of things that I would like to request. One is the San Jose Water rate increase is on the City of San Jose Rules Committee meeting coming up this Wednesday at 2 p.m. I invite anybody who's listening to email this Rules Committee by emailing city.clerk@sanjoseca.gov by 9 a.m. on Wednesday, and just express what you have to say with water. And now suggestions for the City Council for Monte Sereno is you have done that in the past, and I really appreciate that, is to send a joint letter to CPUC working with your city attorney and just expressing, what your take is on GRC, and also engaging the residents to send their protest as well would be very good. And I also invite residents to email CPUC. Just follow the simple instructions. We have a water app as well. It's called Silicon Valley Water. You can find it on the App Store. For some reason, we are not able to find it, but if you had an app downloaded, it should be working. Just follow the instructions at rishikumar.com/water. And I also invite residents to join the Water Oversight Group, which is also the details of that at the website. And with that, that's all I'm going to say tonight. There's a lot of data behind this that you can find over the last few years. We have been compiling all of them, and it's part of our statements that we send out to CPUC. I've not covered many of these areas, but I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. And that's roughly equal time. If we do have any very specific follow-up questions of Mr. Kumar, we can do that. Otherwise, it sounds like you've given us some good links and lots of information to follow up on. So I'm not sure if we have John Tang wanting to come back for a couple of minutes of response. If your hand is up for that purpose, I'll go ahead and recognize John Tang for about 2 more minutes here, and then we're going to turn to council member discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make this very fast. I just wanted to mention that City Manager Leonardo said about the public hearing that the PUC will hold in May. I don't know when that meeting will take place. Typically, it's been held in person, but certainly with COVID and the pandemic that's going on, I don't know how the PUC will set up the logistics for that meeting. It could be a virtual meeting, but certainly as I have more information, I will pass that along to you. And actually, when a meeting is set, whether it's virtual or not, or in person, there will be another public notice that will be mailed to all residents. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that I don't know the timing of that. It may be in May, but you know, the PUC is driving that meeting.
All right, thank you for that information. All right, let's go ahead and turn to further council member discussion and potential directions going forward here. So, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, I just had a question. Somebody made a comment that whether there's a contract between the water company and the city of Monte Sereno. I don't believe there is. I think that all that is controlled by the rates are controlled by the PUC. But City Manager Leonardo, maybe you can help us with that. Is there a specific contract we have with the San Jose Water Company?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. There is no contract between the city of Monte Sereno and San Jose Water Company. Other than I'm not certain if we collect franchise fees with a franchise fee agreement. I would have to look that up.
Yeah, okay, any further council member discussion? I'm going to start calling on people if you don't raise your hands here. Councilmember Turner, any comments in terms of direction forward at this time, your suggestions?
Yes, I think we should go ahead and write the letter to the CPUC.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Mekachek, your thoughts at this time?
Sure, what I'd like to do is I have a number of questions that are that Mr. Tang has to respond to. I'm trying to get a hold of the Public Advocate Office to understand the questions that they had asked that that San Jose Water Company has responded to. But I can't report to council and our citizens at this time. But what I'd like to do is put some time on the agenda at the next meeting so that I can report back what I've found, and or I could send a memo on the public record for the meeting in 2 weeks. I would offer to do that.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lawler, any thoughts and comments?
Yes, well, I think I actually agree with Councilmember Turner. I think that we should draft a letter to the CPUC expressing our concerns about these rates. And I would definitely encourage residents and give them the information they need to also email the CPUC separately, whether it's through engaging through the website or social media.
Thank you. Anything further, other council members? Seeing nobody jumping in. Yeah, my thoughts, I think these meetings last time around, when it was a much smaller request, were extremely important to our citizens. We saw that in Los Gatos, we saw that in Monte Sereno, we saw people expressing huge amounts of outrage. And I think we're not in that same environment where people can come to City Hall and express that outrage, but I can't imagine they're feeling any less outrage for a request that's twice as large. So I think it's really important that we do reach out to our community. We make sure people know what's going on. We make sure that they understand that they have a voice in how to use it. that we make sure that we, as their representatives, do our best to work with the input we have and our own knowledge on these issues. So I'm very much for writing the letter and conducting any further investigation into specific details. I think it's very valuable, some of the stuff we heard about PE ratios and about management bonuses and about profits and reinvestment, about promises made and not kept. Once again, I have to say I am extremely offended. My apologies to Mr. Tang about my emotion about this, but I really don't like to hear lies from PR flats. We were promised in writing, excuse me, that the Connecticut Water merger would benefit us as stakeholders. And now you're telling us that that's bullshit. So, and it was never intended to be true, and you're hiding behind the CPUC. Unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. So I want to see this brought forward. I want to see us move on it. And I am willing to certainly look for more input from Councilmember Turner regarding the shareholder issues, which she's done some research into. Councilmember Mekachek regarding the details. I know you are a detailed and financially oriented person. And really has a lot to bring back to us. So my suggestion is this isn't an emergency time-wise. We're getting a good early start on this. And I think my suggestion is we do bring this back next week for further input as we start to develop a very, very strong, very focused letter and information we can pass to our citizens about how they can get involved and really address these issues, because there are some significant problems we need to address with this. So those are my thoughts. All right, let's go ahead and we will, I think we can just note now that we'll bring this back next week, if that's all right. Do we have some nods from council members? Okay, so we don't have to bring this back up on future agenda items. We'll just go ahead and bring this back next week for further progress. All right, ready to move on to the next subject. Do we need to take a 5-minute break before we move on? We're past 9 o'clock here. I'm getting nods. Let's take a 5-minute break. If everybody would please set your watches to be back in 5 minutes, because I would like to close this meeting down and let staff go home as quick as we can. So see you all in 5 minutes. All right, my stopwatch says 5 minutes. So, and it looks like we have a quorum back. So going back on the record here, I did want to reach out one more time and find out if we have anyone here from the Science Fair project. If we do, please raise your hand and we will address that issue. If not, we will be looking to pass that matter to the next agenda. Not seeing any hands raised, so it looks like we're going to need to push the Science Fair recognition out to the February 16th meeting. Okay, so if everyone is back, let's go ahead and go to item 9. Do we have any discussion from city staff on this? Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Luthold. I just wanted to let the public know that we received correspondence from the public about an adoption of a local mask ordinance. And an example from the city of Carmel was provided by the members of the public to Monte Sereno staff, and that is attached in the staff report. Staff has reviewed the ordinance and has determined if council were to consider such an ordinance, enforcement would be handled by the Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department or the County of Santa Clara Public Health Department. Since these two entities are already tasked with enforcement of the county health order, the local mask ordinance would be largely redundant. In addition, Monte Sereno, unlike Carmel and our other neighboring jurisdictions such as Los Gatos, Saratoga, and others, has no commercial shopping areas. So in other words, Monte Sereno would only be able to enforce mask wearing via local ordinance within our 1.6 square miles of residential neighborhoods and not the surrounding area, which was a point of concern for the individual who submitted the inquiry about adopting a local mask ordinance. This concludes my comments, and staff is available for questions.
Right. Any questions of staff at this time? Ms. Lawler.
Yes, Mr. Leonardis, you mentioned did you say you spoke with the chief of police? I know you mentioned that at the last meeting about something like this.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Lawler. I actually spoke with the chief of police on 2 occasions, including one this evening. And his comments were that they have only issued 2 citations, I think it was in the last 8 months, for individuals who did not wear masks, and that usually when somebody is approached and they are not wearing a mask and they're asked to wear a mask, they usually put the mask on. In the cases where they did issue the citations, those individuals, I don't believe were, he said, required to pay the violation by the district attorney's office or something like that. He got into a little bit of legal, and he offered to be here this evening to answer these questions in more detail. And I can get answers if council has specific questions from the chief of police. But to make a long story short, he felt, the impression he left me with is that it's very difficult to, number one, issue a citation, and number two, the citations generally don't get followed up on, or the fines don't get followed up on. Last but not least, he mentioned that the County of Santa Clara is still in the process of creating a way to make the citation stick, but it's still being developed.
All right, thanks.
Any further questions of staff? Otherwise, I will open this up. If we have any public comments, please raise your hand. And we can call on members of the public if you wish to speak to the issue of the mask ordinance. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close public comment and open this up for council discussion. Council members, anyone wishing to speak? Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Thank you. When initially this matter came up, I thought the ordinance might be helpful. But as you think through it and considering that the Santa Clara County Health Department and the Santa Clara County Sheriff, there's already laws on the books against people who do not wear masks. And the police department already has the tools to enforce those laws. So I think the direction we may want to consider is rather than a resolution, maybe a proclamation, and maybe that's not the right word for it, but some kind of a statement that encourages that basically commends the citizens of Monte Sereno for wearing masks. I mean, as you walk these days, you can see people wearing masks, and commend them for doing so and encouraging them to continue doing so, and also maybe sending something to the adjacent cities saying, we understand that you are doing what you can, but please continue to encourage your citizens to wear masks, because what happens in Los Gatos affects what Monte Sereno residents when they're out there shopping. So more of a statement kind of a letter, or a proclamation type of a letter, or something else that would commend people who are wearing masks and continue to encourage them to doing so, rather than another ordinance which we will not be able to enforce in any case. And our police department, they've already issued 2 citations. Also, with the vaccination going on, some people may not choose to wear a mask, even though they probably should, because they think that they're immune to it. So I think it's an issue that should be discussed. But my thought would be to do some kind of a statement or a letter or something else that to other citizens saying, we're doing it, and please continue to encourage your citizens to wear masks.
Right, thank you. Councilmember Makachuk.
I received an email from one of the citizens of Monte Sereno, and that person says that, and I'll just read it. The county order is clear. Perhaps our town could make it clear that we strongly endorse the county ordinance. And we could do this by putting that statement in the minutes, by emailing that ordinance to our citizens, and perhaps repeating the endorsement reminder from time to time. So I think that underscores with what Mayor Pro Tem Elahi just mentioned a moment ago. So I would be in support of that.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. This is something that, the Monte Sereno residents have been really, really good this last year. And I know, Mayor Lithold, you walk your dog, and for those of us that are out walking the streets every day, I know that the folks, this is the social interaction, socially distanced across the street, and seeing people smile has been a really positive thing for our community in getting through this. So I agree that we should, again, issue a statement instead of an ordinance, a statement that has a positive reinforcement message, like, thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing, keep up the good work, because an ordinance would be just unnecessary and unenforceable at this point. But I agree with both council members Makachuk and Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Turner, any comments? You're on mute.
One other thing is that we could ask our social media staff to issue statements, every couple of weeks or every week, either on Nextdoor or sending them emails as well, to remind them to wear masks.
Yeah, Councilmember Lawler.
Yes, well, I think we were all supposed to send in photographs of ourselves wearing masks. And I know our city clerk has been posting on Instagram and doing a fantastic job of getting messaging out from the county. So thank you.
All right, great. Ms. Turner, anything further? Okay, great. Yeah, sounds like we've got good direction on that. I here we're certainly in consensus in terms of letting our citizens know that it's noted and appreciated that for the most part they have been doing really, really well. We want people to continue. We want that message to continue to get out. And yeah, it really is important. I think the message is becoming pretty clear. People are, it seems, becoming a little gentler with each other. Maybe it's just what I've been reading. But people understand that it's not necessary to always wear a mask if you're out exercising or such, and you can stay more than 6 feet away from people. But I've been seeing that most of the walkers who are staying more than 6 feet away either are wearing their masks or they have their mask handy and are very much making the effort to stay further away. So it's people have been doing a really great job from what I've seen. It's just a surprise when I read about other parts of the country where it's so much more confrontational and problematic. And certainly people had the experience going to Los Gatos, and there are still problems in downtown Los Gatos. So I guess my suggestion would be to continue to recommend city manager, when you talk to the police chief, that, I mean, we looking at our police department, which does overlap, really do expect them to be doing their part to try to keep our citizens safe as we move around our community and the other communities nearby. And set a good example for everybody by showing there's enforcement. Once again, I mean, I know we've had some discussion about the police presence in other matters when there were some of the protests going on, but I would suggest that it would really not hurt a thing if the police could walk through downtown Los Gatos and walk through the farmers market and point at people's noses and really show that they're community policing rather than telling us they've only got 4 officers and they really don't want to be out there in public being visible. But I want to see them on the streets. I don't think I've ever seen an officer walk down the street in Los Gatos. The motorcycle cops, I don't see them anymore. Used to be we would see them out and about, and they'd be there directing traffic if things were going on. So my suggestion back to the police, which I think is where this began, would be just walk down the street, get some exercise, show that you're there, say hi to your people, let people know that that the parklets don't have to be enforced necessarily by the shop owners, but because there's going to be somebody walking by who's actually got a uniform on now and then. So those are my suggestions. But it sounds like we can put something into the minutes, and we can just probably directly from city staff get the message out.
And Mayor Luthold, if I can add one comment that I overlooked before. The Chief DeSena mentioned today that Los Gatos Town Council voted to expend more funds to add more signs to in the downtown area and the shopping areas to remind people to wear their masks. So there will be an increased signage campaign reminding those shoppers to wear masks.
All right, Councilmember Lawler.
Yeah, yes, I just have one more thing to add for residents there. You can go to scccovidconcerns.org. This has been up and running for several months. This was something that the enforcement task force put together, and it's a place where you can report businesses if you're uncomfortable with their protocols, or so citizens and residents can take action if they are concerned about businesses in anywhere they go.
Right, sounds good. Okay, moving on to our next item. This is item 11, consideration of Monte Sereno Community Grants deadlines, selection dates, and budget. Mr. Leonardis, staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Luthold. As was highlighted in our staff report, Monte Sereno now has an online application process for community or CBO grants. Those grants are distributed after the budget is adopted by council in June. Staff recommends the application process begin March 1st and conclude May 4th, which allows for about a 2-month window, essentially, for applicants to apply for this year's cycle. This timeframe also allows for council to use the May 18th pre-budget meeting to award grants prior to the final budget adoption. Staff will post the application process and timeframes on our newsfeed, Constant Contact, Nextdoor, and Instagram. And I am available for questions about timelines and process.
All right, any questions? Seeing none, let's go ahead and open this to see if there's any public comment on the grants, community grants. If there's anybody in the public wishing to speak on this matter, please raise your hand now. And seeing none, let's go ahead and close public comment and move to council member discussion on this. Any council members wishing to discuss this item? Ms. Lawler.
I think this timeline is great. It worked really well for us last time. So I say we go ahead and move forward with this.
All right, and just to clarify, Mr. Leonardis, in terms of budget, are we, is it your thought that we were going to talk about budget amounts now, or that's going to be part of our preliminary budget discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. In the report this evening, I recommended going with the same amount we utilized last year, which was $20,000. And we last year distributed $17,000 in grants. We did, because of COVID-19, do on special occasion and special meetings, 3 other community grants, 2 of them to West Valley Community Services at $5,000 each, and 1 to the Disaster Aid Response Team at $5,000. But those were outside of the CBO grants process, which we recommend to be $20,000 as our budget line item. Council, of course, has the purview to increase that amount if they desire. And that could be considered at this time when we make our announcement and put it out to our news feed, our Nextdoor, and our notifications. We could add or broadcast the amount that council, if council prefers a greater amount than the 20,000. I will say that 20,000 is a generous amount for a city of our size. So in our budget, so it is the taxpayers' money. It would be nice to have an endless amount of money to give out, but we're not in that position exactly.
All right, thank you. And actually, I have a question if our city attorney is available online here and still paying attention, whether this agenda item today, whether we're really can take action and authorize a specific budget amount at this time for the grants, or whether we need to go through some other process in terms of allocating the amount for the grants if we choose to allocate the same amount or are looking to increase this amount.
I think that given that the agenda title reflects council consideration of appropriate budgeted amount, I think the council could take a budget action here. But of course, I think it's probably best practice to ensure that, that is also reflected in the formal budget that's adopted. If you're appropriating money for the 2021-2022 budget as well, I would, whatever direction you provide the city manager for preparing that budget tonight, for this budget line item, I think the city manager can include it when it comes back to you for budget time.
So we would be looking for a specific resolution at the end of this discussion, adopting the deadlines and dates and allocating an amount if council agrees on that. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that you can take all of those actions by minute order, frankly. I don't think you need a written resolution to adopt for that.
All right, thank you. All right, other council member discussion about this? Councilmember Turner, looks like you might be reaching for your mute button.
Yes, I would much rather leave the conversation until we can look at the budget.
All right. Councilmember Elahi, any comments?
I think I agree with that. I don't know if there's a need to establish deadlines right now, or that can wait when we do the budget, because obviously this is going to be part of this year's process. And But normally I think applications are submitted during the beginning of the year. So where are we on that as far as getting applications in, as far as our last year's timeline was concerned?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for your question. So last year, we implemented a process and we put the community grants application on our city website. And we had a similar period of application and deadline to file. And then we presented the information to council for those who had applied at our pre-budget meeting. And then at that point in time, essentially it was the council's opportunity to select the amounts and the grantees that evening. And then we were able to incorporate that into the formal budget adoption. So the way the process worked last year under this similar timeframe that we're looking at and similar budget amount, it worked very smoothly. And I think it was a great improvement over the previous process, which had occurred, I believe it was in budget year 2019, prior to my arrival. So I want to emphasize that council always has the purview to select an amount, say it would be 20,000 as recommended in the staff report. And if you were to get $22,000 in grants, or last year we awarded 17,000, we awarded less than the recommended $20,000, council would still have the discretion on the night when the applicants turn in all their, they meet the deadline and we present it in the staff report, and council is selecting the grantees to pick pick an amount, but the objective would be to kind of aim for about $20,000, which historically has served the city well. And this gives applicants an opportunity. The most we have given out, for instance, has been $5,000, say to KCAT or Jazz in the Plaza, those types of entities. So that is the highest amount of our grants. Typically, on the low end grants range $1,500 to $2,000. So that's just additional information for council this evening. But the goal is to essentially get this out on our broadcast methods. So these organizations who are doing their budgeting for their upcoming events, and I hope that maybe some of these events can go live this year, but nevertheless, it gives them an opportunity to kind of get their funding in place, and it allows us to also be able to plan for it. So this is a good time of the year to start the process, have a deadline, bring it back to council for final approval, and then incorporate it into our budget.
It sounds like we're looking for some dates as to when the application process should start and by when they should submit it, and just a ballpark number that we should adopt, that it'll be about 20,000 overall.
Yes, in the staff report, we recommend a 2-month period. Essentially, we make the announcement on March 1st, alert the community that we are offering community grants, that they can go online, access the application, complete it, and get it turned in by May 4th. And then at the May 18th council meeting, council will vote on the grantees and the amounts. And then we will take that information, that'll be part of our budget, pre-budget and budget session, and we will be able to essentially plug that number right into the budget as a line item.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Mekachek, you had your hand up.
Yes, I think we should follow the process that Mr. Leonardis set out in his report.
All right, thank you. Any other council member comments on this? Seeing none, do we have I guess it would be a motion to adopt the schedule to follow as staff has indicated, and with a preliminary indication that the budget is probably similar to before, but will be subject to review once we see the applications.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call on that.
Councilmember Mekachek,
Aye.
Councilmember Turner,
No,
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi,
Yes.
Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, that concludes the new business. Now we move along to council member comments, and then we'll have the city manager report and future agenda items. So council member comments will also cover committee and commission reports. Does anyone have committee commission reports or comments? Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, I thought I'd share with you my vaccination that I went through last week. So it's a pretty painless process. Valley Medical Center makes appointments 15 minutes apart. Takes about 30 minutes to go through that, and they screen you. And after they vaccinated me, I couldn't even tell they actually vaccinated me. I thought she was just banking the vaccine somewhere else because it didn't hurt at all. I was sore a little bit the next day. So it's a pretty painless process. I'd encourage everybody to get the vaccine when they become eligible for it. And it's, there's no long car waiting lines or whatever else. And supposedly it's all free. So go for it, guys.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Reports, comments? Seeing none, let's just move along then to the city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor Luthold. Two things this evening. It was very nice to see the kindergartners walking down Days Avenue today. I'm happy to see some of the kids back in school. So just want to remind the public to drive safely around the school. It's been a long time and we're not used to those kids being back. So have to be extra careful, especially with the weather conditions we've had lately. Also, our clerk, Michelle Radcliffe, and our IT professional, Dave Kizan, have been working diligently to help us launch our new meeting management software called iCompass. We are hoping to have this up and running for our March 2nd council meeting. There may be some changes how council receives and views packages, our meeting packages. Ms. Radcliffe will have more details about this at our February 16th council meeting. That concludes my comments this evening.
All right. Anyone want to bring up any other future agenda items other than what we've already covered as we went through today? Seeing one hand, Councilmember Mekachek.
Yes, I have a question. How this is a general question. How Council Member Lawler and I coordinate our ad hoc committee. That's my first question because I'm new to council and ad hoc committees. And then my second one is that I would like to put a draft charter together for an ad hoc finance committee. And I would like to understand how I submit that to council going forward.
All right. So Councilmember Lawler, you've been on various ad hoc committees. Do you want to offer your 2 cents on coordinating your ad hoc with Councilmember Mekachek?
Sure. We'll just, I'll send you an email and we can decide what time works for us and we can have a Zoom meeting. That would be
perfect.
Probably the easiest. Yeah.
All right. And in terms of the designing the outlines for the ad hoc committee for the finance committee you're proposing, I would suggest that you can probably interface with the city attorney on that in terms of just kind of the verbiage that would be appropriate. And you can look at the other ad hoc committees in terms of what has been done there, although the finance committee is a little more complicated and sophisticated. So that will probably need some back and forth as you look to what that charter should be for that.
And in terms of getting it on the agenda, that would be submitted to city clerk and city manager.
Once you have a rough outline of it, submit it by the Monday before at the very latest for the next meeting. and any council member can put something on. Generally try to coordinate that through the city manager, who is running herd on trying to keep the agendas from getting too long, but also wants to give priority, obviously, to getting ad hoc committees started, since it takes some of the burden off of some of the staff once we've got a committee working on things.
Thank you. I'll follow up with City Attorney Rudin and then work with City Manager Leonardis. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Nobody else is raising a hand. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting today and see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Good night. Thank you.